Wayne Lavrenz, United States Army, Vietnam. Wayne's one of my Vietnam veterans. I interviewed him in Algona, Iowa. It was August the 9th, 2007. Interviewed a lot of veterans at that time, and Wayne was drafted in the military at the age of 19 years of age, went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for training, and on to Fort Rucker, Alabama. He was a door gunner, crew chief on a Huey helicopter, and has just an amazing story. I think he suffers from PTSD like a lot of the Vietnam veterans do, but he sought help, and I know it's therapeutic. It's very good for these veterans to talk to me. Sometimes I feel like a therapist. I was once called a psychiatrist with a camera. Wow. A burden's lifted when you talk about a traumatic experience in your life, whether it's war or something else. So Wayne opened up to me and told a great story, and I want to thank Harry Marshall before I forget. Thank you, Harry, for sponsoring this story and your continued support of my work. God bless you, sir. What a patriot you are, and for helping our veterans and helping others to learn more about Vietnam. And I just really am grateful for you, Harry. God bless you. Thank you for your support. So Wayne Lavrenz, it's a great story, folks, like I said, in Algona, Iowa, and a great perspective as a door gunner on a Huey, and the gunships that went in cleared the landing zones for the troops to come in and the dust-offs to come in, the helicopters, medevac helicopters to come in. So he was a Screaming Eagle, by the way, 101st Airborne, Company B, and just a great outfit, infamous outfit from World War II also, so 101st Airborne. Amen. Okay, folks, if you'd like to donate to this work, you know how to do it. I've said it enough. If you want to sponsor a veteran story that I have many hundreds of stories that still have in my archives, get a hold of me and I can help you to do that. So God bless you. Sit back, enjoy this story. I really think you're going to like it, and let me know. Send me a comment. All right? God bless you.
Yes, I am.
What year did you join the military, or were you drafted?
I was drafted in 1971, February 71, and ended up 3 years in the military, or in the Army. Basic training to get out of infantry. I signed up to be, well, it ended up being a door gunner. Unbeknownst to me that the helicopters were the main mode of transportation and everything else in Vietnam, so once I got into the training of helicopters, I found that out, so gave me a fast ticket to Vietnam.
Were you living in Iowa at the time?
Yeah, I was living right here.
So what was this your first time away from home, basically?
Pretty much, yeah. Yep, took a raw kid out of Cornfield, Iowa, and put him halfway around the world.
What an experience. How did that change you, that whole experience?
It made me very bitter, being sent to Vietnam. I dealt with that many years. And even to today, I don't feel bitter towards the men and women being sent to Iraq or Afghanistan, but I just don't participate in their welcome homes or their send-offs. I feel for them, but because of what I went through, I just have a tough time being there.
Where'd you go to basic training at?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
And how old were you at that time? 71, you said?
19. Yeah, actually, just before my 20th birthday is when I went in.
And did you expect to be drafted, or were you hoping you wouldn't be? Or
well, I didn't really have much choice there, I guess. That's the only lottery I ever won.
That's a good way to put it.
I got my draft or my physical notice like the second week or the first week in January of '71. I got back here in Algona, Iowa, and the gal, we got off the bus, she told me that I just will sign up because I'll be in the Army probably within 3 or 4 weeks, and I didn't believe her, but 1st of February, I was in the Army. So it was about 3 weeks after my physical, I actually got drafted.
What were your thoughts at that time about Vietnam? I mean, it seemed like a lot of the heavier fighting had happened. We're in the early 70s now. I mean, what were your thoughts and your thoughts of your peers about Vietnam? Like, it was a bad place to be, or I mean, how were you thinking back then?
Well, I remember some of the gentlemen prior than me getting drafted, the ones that had been in the Army, came home. They looked all in one piece, but I was definitely a protester. I was a product of the late 60s. My dad was also a prisoner of war during World War II for 27 months. And so I had strings pulling on both sides. I didn't want to go, but yet I wanted to be loyal to him. I definitely didn't feel that we should be there, but actually I didn't know a whole lot about it. Yeah, I had very mixed emotions on it. When I first got my draft notice, I was ready to run. But because of my dad's history and everything, I knew I couldn't. So, and uncles, I had 3 uncles and my dad were in World War II all at the same time. And I had one uncle that was severely injured and came through that, and another one that was in the South Pacific. And I just felt that I owed them the loyalty to go to Vietnam and actually go into the Army. So
you're in basic training. I mean, are they training you for combat? I mean, what do they put in your head as far as getting to Vietnam? And are they taking in that in consideration that you're going to go there? I mean, you're obviously going to go there.
Oh, definitely, definitely. It was basically, I felt it was kill or be killed type training. And everything was about Charlie. And, you know, you do this or do that, or Charlie's going to do this or that. So, yeah, it was definitely getting ready to go to war.
And at that young age, do you feel invincible? Do you feel like nothing could happen to you? I mean, what are your thoughts? And is there a baptism under fire when you get in country and get shot at, or?
It's definitely an eye-opener. I don't think you can really prepare or be trained to be shot at or to shoot another person. You know, you hear it all the time by the drill instructors and stuff about shooting or be shot at and stuff like that, but it doesn't really sink in until I think you're there and actually experience it.
What do you remember about the first time going in country, Wayne? I mean, what did you experience when you first got to Vietnam?
Well, we went into Cam Bay, and I remember it was early morning, and we were flying down the coast, and I kept seeing flashes off into the countryside. And my first thought was them cannons, what's exploding, and I was pretty scared. What am I getting into? I mean, it was just really surreal up until that point. You know, what am I getting into all of a sudden? I mean, to that point, it was kind of like a fantasy. You know, here I'm going to war, big deal. But once I actually, we flew down the coast early morning before sunup, you could see all these flashes. I just finally realized, you know, maybe something's real here. So.
This is your first time in a combat zone?
Oh, definitely, yes.
And what was your MOS at the time?
I was a helicopter door gunner.
That's actually an MOS?
Yeah, it's UH. Oh boy, I don't exactly remember, but it was a door gunner or a crew chief on a helicopter is what it actually amounts to. And then you're not made a crew chief until you're a door gunner for a while, or it depends on the the demand for them and whatever happens. So
you're training on the Hueys before you go?
Yes, I was in Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Just like the pilots.
Yep.
Okay, and then you're in Vietnam. You assigned to a unit. What battalion or company are you?
I was with the 101st Airborne Division, B Company of the 101st Airborne Division, Air Mobile.
Screaming Eagles?
Screaming Eagles, Camp Eagle.
And you're there for a year?
I was there for about just short of 9 months. And then I was able to get out of there. When troops were starting to come out of there pretty heavily. I believe, if my memory serves me right, it was like 25,000 troops left in country when I left. And when I got there, about 9 months before that, there was over 300,000 troops. So that was the big start of the big pullout when I got there. But there was still plenty of activity going on.
Nixon's the president at this time?
Nixon was the president, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me about your first engagements over there, where you were, what you were doing, and what was happening?
Well, the first rocket attack that I experienced, I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I believe I was out on top of a helicopter with a Sergeant Kennedy, and we were just doing some PM on it, just checking it out and everything, and all of a sudden I felt a real intense heat on my face. And just a split second after that, there was a big explosion. And between that heat I felt on my face until the explosion, Sergeant Kennedy had jumped down off the top of the helicopter and told me, run and find a bunker. We're under attack. And sure enough, we were under a rocket attack, and I mean, I was scared spitless. I didn't know what to do, and he just grabbed me and basically drugged me into the bunker nearby. And I had a tough time sleeping that night, experienced that for the first time. That happened probably only just a few days after I'd arrived in country, and it was signed to the company that I was at. And just about, you could almost bet when you were going to have a rocket attack, because we had daily hires that would come in, or nightly hires, whatever. They'd run the generators for us, native Vietnamese people, and they would run the generators, or they would help clean up the mess hall and do stuff like that. Whenever they wouldn't show up, you could just about bet you're going to have a rocket attack that night. So they knew exactly what was going on also.
And you're at Camp Evans, you said, or Camp... What camp are you at?
Evans, yeah, I believe it was Evans, yeah, not Camp Ewell, but Camp Evans.
So in 101st Airborne.
Yeah.
So did you, that was your first time, I mean, you guys go out in the field every day, you going on helicopters?
We basically, our company was support on a lot of things. We did carry a lot of supplies and food out to the troops. We would take troops back and forth. Occasionally we would, we'd have to go out and pick up some troops, wounded troops, and bring them back.
Was that part of a medevac, or is that?
Well, it was part of a medevac, yeah, but usually it was because we were there, already there, something. We would pick up bodies or wounded or whatever. Occasionally there was, we did have to go into some hot LZs, landing zones. I remember the first time that we went into called a hot landing zone. I almost burnt the barrel off the M60 because you're supposed to shoot at spurts, and my finger was just glued on that thing. I was scared to death. And you know, it was pretty scary and pretty traumatic. And I remember going in there, and I don't even remember landing basically. And I know we picked up 5 or 6 people, and we were up in the air again. And I don't even remember that part at all. But I just remember going in and taking off, and it was pretty scary, real scary.
So when you're flying into an LZ like that, or a hot LZ, are there troops on board, or is it just the crew? And I guess it depends on the mission.
Yeah, it really depends on the mission. Most of the time we would take maybe a new troop would come into country. They were assigned to a infantry unit, and we'd happen to take them out, or a couple guys. A lot of times they'd stick around our base until they got 3 or 4 that were assigned to the same place. Then we would take them out and drop them off. And it was just, it almost felt like you're just pushing somebody off into the ocean, and like you wondered if they even have a chance. And but I know they were pretty scared. And after a month or so, you felt like you were a veteran, pretty good, an old hand at what was going on. And you try to say, oh, it'll be all right, it'll be all right. Now we're only going to come about 3 feet from the ground. You're going to have to jump or something like that. And you just see them jumping and falling, and boy, you just really felt for them guys. So
are you? I guess that's one of my questions. You're talking to these troops as a door gunner. You're able to talk to them where the pilot can't. But so are you guys encouraging them, talking to them? Is there
trying to encourage them? I mean, it's so noisy in that helicopter. You really couldn't. You really had to shout. But you just encourage them, say it's be all right, or you'd pat them on the back and say good luck or whatever. And I know there's times in my mind I hope I don't have to pick you up and throw you in the helicopter or something. But it was quite an experience.
So can you tell me about the looks on their faces? I mean, and as you go into just slow it down for me. I mean, they're getting the pickup, they're getting up on the helicopter on the tarmac, and you guys are taking off. Within minutes, you're probably there. And what about the looks on their faces? Were they scared? Were they confident? Were they laughing?
I think when we picked them up, they were laughing and all gung-ho. And by the time we got to where we were going, it was just like I was coming into Vietnam. All of a sudden, boy, maybe I'm really here. And there was a lot of scared looks. I mean, I don't think you ever get rid of that scared look. I was that way after I'd been there 6, 7 months, going into an LZ or something like that, not knowing what's behind the trees, or you'd come in, you'd see some VC or something in black suits, maybe a mile or something, running behind trees and stuff like that, hoping there was no no VC in your area when you were going in there. Occasionally there was.
Are there two door gunners or just one?
Well, there's two actually. One would be official name would be a crew chief, but usually there was one on either side. One was a crew chief, one was just a door gunner, but basically they did the same thing.
Now, are these mounted M60s?
Yes, they're mounted, basically hung out over the skids, and you could sit down and you could sit down and just reach your hands out and touch the gun, but the barrel and everything was out over the skids and everything.
And they're firing back at times, and what does that sound like, and what does that look like?
You really can't hear coming back, but you see the tracers coming back. I believe ours were orange and theirs were green. So if you saw the green ones, you just made sure you hope that nothing hits you.
Over that period of time at your tour, I mean, I'm sure your mindset changes, maybe your thoughts change, you become a veteran of combat. Were you ever thinking about home or your father, or did your thoughts ever tend towards home, or just what the heck am I doing here? Or did you just get focused on your mission, or what? I mean, what wasn't going on in your head?
I think my mind was always on home. And I think, your mind can play some pretty good tricks on you, and your mind can keep you going sometimes. I just know there's many times as I'm looking back and thinking about it, I always thought, I need to go home. I need to get out of this thing and go home. I need to survive because they can't get along without me at home. That was my thought a lot of times about that. And my brother, just about a month or two before I had got drafted, was blowing off a guard tower. And he's even to this day he's battling with that. Had operation after operation and dealing with the VA and all that stuff. But I just kept constantly thinking that I've got too much stuff at home to let this end it.
So how do you get through the hard times? Is it your training, your faith in God? How do you get through those hard times?
I think it's all above. You got to put the training that you received. Because them DIs, drill instructors, I think they really knew what they were talking about. They tried to be hardcore, but they had a heart, most of them, and really wanted to see you succeed. And definitely my faith definitely got me through a lot of it. So,
what was maybe the hardest thing you had to do during that tour in Vietnam?
One time there was a big typhoon that came through. I think it was like in the fall of '71. And the war literally shut down for 2 weeks from where we were at. And the typhoon had literally moved the ocean. We were about 6 miles from the ocean. I think it literally moved it up to about within a mile with all the water and the beaches and stuff like that. And there was a big Chinook helicopter that took off from Da Nang at that time and was coming north to us. And it went down with 25 troops in it. And we had to go after the weather had cleared and stuff. It'd been out there for a week or two. And the Rangers had went out there and body bagged everything and took care of whatever they needed to take care of. And we had to go out there and pick up some body bags, and one broke as we was putting it in the helicopter. And I mean, I just totally lost it. I wanted to run as fast as I could, but I had no place to go. So that's probably, to me, was the worst that I could see is that body bag and just seeing body parts in that bag.
Were there engagements with the VC, or were we fighting the NVA too, or just the Viet Cong, or just?
I'm sure there was both, but I don't know for sure. All I know is I've seen bodies run sometimes.
Did you ever fight on the ground, or were you always up?
I was always in a helicopter or coming into an LZ.
So do you have belts of ammunition? How do you feed? Is it air cooled, water cooled?
Well, it's air cooled. The M60 was air cooled, but we had a big ammo box on either side. You just flip it up or take the shells out of one side and just flip it up under the. And you're pretty limited. I mean, you could take extra boxes along with you and something, but I never figured we were going to be out that long, and some people say you should and some said you shouldn't, and I never did.
At what point do you open up, and who gives the order to do that?
Well, it's usually the pilot or the co-pilot. They would say, we're coming in now, put a burst into that tree line over on the so-and-so side or whatever, and keep your eyes open and give short bursts every, once in a while to keep people back if there's any in there.
So it's just basically a covering fire because you're coming in or whatever. How about when you're medevacing out? Are you shooting, or the actual medevac choppers didn't have guns?
No, the actual medevacs didn't have them. We could take probably 3 or 4 at a time is all. And we weren't really, the medevacs actually had the litters where you could hang the litters up in the helicopter. We could put 1 litter up, and that was it. And usually they just sat on the floor of the helicopter, and we would take maybe 2 or 3 at a time, and that would be it. Yes, we did have our 60s on both sides, but it was lack of words, I guess, a courtesy ride more than anything. If I mean, that might be a crude way of putting it, but if the medevac couldn't get in there, we were in there already leaving, so that's what we did.
Did it ever get chaotic on a medevac mission, or is it just pretty still?
It was pretty still usually. I don't remember having taken any fire while we were taking some bodies out. I know we had, like I say, put short bursts into the tree lines or something coming in or something, but that was usually just because we were bringing something in, and while we were down, we would pick somebody up, and it usually that part was pretty calm. So one thing I do remember, and I was just thinking about this recently, that as I think back, whatever helicopter I was on, nobody ever got wounded. And I don't know if I had an angel over us or something, I don't know, but nobody ever got wounded. Helicopter took some rounds, but nobody in the helicopter that I was in ever got wounded. And it seemed like just about everybody else, helicopter, somebody got wounded here or there, but I know. Were
you on a mission at some point where a helicopter was shot down, and did you see it happen? And I mean, what?
Excuse me. I never actually, well, I did. I did see one in the distance go down. I went in, our helicopter would go in just shortly after one had went down. That case, it was shot, and it shot down, and something hit the engine or the hydraulics or something. They had to make a rotor rotation and a hard landing, and then we just went in and picked them up. But it was probably 2 or 3 miles from the area where they'd actually got shot. So,
what about coming back from missions? I mean, you guys get pretty tight as a group, and do you talk about things, or how do you unwind?
Usually with a beer, more than one beer. There was usually 2 types of people in Vietnam that I thought, the ones that drank and the one that smoked. And I unfortunately got into the drinking a little bit, and that seemed like that would be the only way you could wind down. I didn't want to get into the marijuana scene. A lot of people did, but I didn't. But we were like, it was buddy-buddy. Each crew, whether they were lieutenants, captains, E5s, E4s, or whatever it was, that was just a little tight-knit group, and they were all buddies, all first-name bases. That I was everybody anyway. Instead of saying Captain so-and-so, it was Joe, Fred, or whatever their names was, and that's how we got along. Unfortunately, once we got back to the company area, the officers usually went their direction, and we went our direction as enlisted men. Occasionally, you'd be invited to the officers' bar or once in a while, but that didn't happen very often. They were kind of their own little knit group, but once we were in the helicopter, around the helicopter, we were all buddies. So
you didn't lose anybody on your cruise? Were there other people in Vietnam that you knew that were killed or wounded?
Yeah, there was. There was couple times I know we came back in, and we escorted a guy that a helicopter got hit, and there was casualties. We would have what we call a monkey strap on us, and I knew right away one time when I saw this guy coming, he was just dangling, and they had to come in and he had been shot, and he was dangling about 15-foot nylon strap that puts on you so you can't fall out, basically. Or you can fall out, but you won't, it'll catch you. And I saw this helicopter in front of us that he was dangling out, and we got kind of close, and you could see he was he was gone. And he just got shot. And we got basically escorted him back to our camp and everything, and they got him off of there. And on numerous occasions, there was guys that come in and got wounded. There was a couple of guys that I don't recall the helicopter crews, anybody getting shot. Well, I take that back. I do too. There was a co-pilot one time that got shot, and they didn't know it until they got back, actually, because he just sat there, and the pilot was actually piloting the plane and everything, or the helicopter, and found out that he'd actually been shot once we got like, because you're just so much wind and so noisy in them things, and if you're doing your job, a lot of times you're not paying attention to the other person.
So the co-pilot isn't really flying the helicopter, he's assisting in the event he has to, or?
He's probably more that just observing and looking out, and he's there to fly it if it needs to be flown. Co-pilot I was with probably flew as much as the pilot, so they traded off a lot. So.
Was there a lot of pride about what you did, or I mean, you said when you got drafted you felt like running, but when you're actually there doing it, was there a lot of pride that happened over those months about what you're doing?
Oh, I think there is. I think they brainwash you to make you feel like you're the toughest and the worst and the baddest person, whatever you're doing for the military, and you actually feel that way. I know after a few years after I had gotten out, that's when the Lieutenant Kelly thing came up, and I was just so upset, because they teach you how to kill, or be killed. I'm not saying he was right or wrong. I'm just saying that he probably did what he had to do at the time. Kill or be killed, and that's what they was teaching us all the time.
So in Vietnam during this tour, what was your rank again?
I went over there as an E2 and came home as an E4.
So private to a corporal, or is that?
Well, corporal would be specialist 4th class. Yeah, same as a corporal, yeah. Okay. I got back, I turned down E5 because I was getting out, and I went in front of the review board, and they asked me what being an E5 would mean to me, and I said about $35 a month. They just said, oh, goodbye. So, I mean, I must have had less than a month left in the military, or 2 months or something like that, and I had no intentions of staying in.
So when you came home, did you just put it all in a closet and forget about it, or?
I did for many years. Many years. I know I went to college right away, and I played football in college, which I went on the GI Bill, which was good. Plus I got some partial scholarships and everything, and I was also during the basketball season, that was part of my scholarship job, was to keep stats of the basketball. I know and even during football, when the national anthem before the game, I'd look in the other direction, and I got reprimanded quite a few times for that. And I just says that's my way of protesting, and people around me understood what I was doing, but I know I got reprimanded by the dean of students and the president of the college and the football coaches and stuff like that, and I just really didn't care. I was pretty bitter.
Well, I'm assuming the homecoming, when you came home, you weren't received, and was it a bad experience like I've heard from some of these guys, or was it relatively mild? I mean, did you get a bad reception when you came home at the airport in San Francisco?
Well, matter of fact, yes, I did. We came into San Francisco or Oakland, went over to get on the plane, and some things that were said to me I just wouldn't even repeat. I went into a restroom, and a couple of guys started mean-mouthing me, and there happened to be a couple other guys that just got back to, and a Marine and stuff like that, and they, well, let's just say us 4 came out, and a couple other guys didn't. So, but it was, yeah, there were some things said that really bothered me. I had a neighbor, growing up in a town of about 500 or 600 people, I had a neighbor that asked me once I got home, where you been? I ain't seen you around for a while. And that totally shocked me. So, but I was definitely very bitter.
So how about over the years? I mean, at what point did you talk about it, or is this the first time maybe you're really talking about it? I mean, have you talked about it recently with your family or anything, or what?
No, I went through some counseling a few years ago, and some of this stuff came up. obviously there's things that went on that I'm not saying right now, and some things it came up, and I just, you know, I released a lot of stuff. I did, and it don't bother me so much talking about it as much as it used to. I'm uncomfortable. I really am. I hear a helicopter today, I have a flashback right now to Vietnam. I can pick a helicopter out 10 miles away probably before anybody else, you know, hearing a helicopter coming around. But, you know, I do have flashbacks if I do hear a helicopter. And I just think of going into an LZ or something, or where's my M60 or something like that. It's just like I get a glazed look on my face. And I know my brother's asked me, he says, snap out of it, because he knows, he was in Vietnam too, and he knows if we're doing something together and I'll hear a helicopter, he knows right away. He said, just forget it. So.
Well, do they call that post-traumatic stress, or is it just?
I don't know, and I'm sure, you know, I've had people, friends of mine that have been to Vietnam, just say, suck it up and get over it. Well, I don't know how to do that. And I really don't know what you call it. I don't dwell on it a long time. At one time I did. I had an experience when I first got home. A small town has a volunteer fire department, and the fire whistle went off one night about 2 o'clock in the morning. And that fire alarm in my hometown was the same as our air raid sound in Vietnam. And I mean, I hadn't been home maybe 2 nights. And that thing went off, and it's dark outside. I jump up out of bed. I don't know where I'm at. I run outside, and I just sat down in the middle of the yard there and just started crying, because I had absolutely no idea where I was at. And I remember my dad coming out and putting his arm around me and just hugging me. And we just sat there and we drank a 6-pack of beer.
I'm going to ask you about your dad. You talk to him. Does he understand a lot of, or your brother? Do they understand pretty much a lot of the stuff that you talk about?
Excuse me.
It's fine. Is he still alive?
My dad's not. No, he died in 2000, I believe, in the year 2000. He didn't get drafted until he was like 27, 28 years old. And so he was a little older than everybody else. He never talked about his experiences. Never talked about them at all. Until about a year before he died, he started opening up to my brother a little bit. But to me, and of course I never pushed it. I guess I always tried to protect him. And so I never pushed the envelope at all to try to get information out of him. But you know, it was quite unique after he did pass away. My brother had shown me some things and that he had done my dad had done while he was a prisoner of war. He had a little book that he wrote things down in, and it just totally amazes me. There's 99 counties in Iowa, and he was able to write them down, remember all of them, put them in alphabetical order, just to keep his mind off of what he was doing. That's what he'd think of. Or he wrote down all the presidents of the United States in sequence, and you know, just things like that would, I mean, it takes some thinking. And so he kept his mind off of what he was doing, I'm sure, or where he was at. So, but he never opened up to me, and I never pushed it. So.
I'm going to ask this question: Are you proud though that you're a Vietnam veteran today? I mean,
I think I am. Yeah. I know the first few years I got back, I wasn't. Even when I went to college, I went to a very conservative Baptist college up in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and I just felt ashamed because anytime something was mentioned, it was like, whoa, who are you? You know, and so it was, and I mean, it was a long time before I probably accepted the fact. And I remember before I went, I was even in high school yet, a good friend of mine, Melvin Faber, he was my hero, because I knew he'd been to Vietnam, and I thought it was an honor to be in the same room as him at one time. And it was quite an experience to be around him. And now that I've got to know him more and heard some more of his stories, it's just, man, he's still my hero. So.
How about people thanking you? Do they do that? How does that make you feel?
I haven't heard that, but up until maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. Probably 2 years ago, I was in Colorado Springs, Colorado on Veterans Day, and they had a parade out there, and they asked any and all Vietnam veterans to gather and to march together. And that was quite an experience for me. Had people come up, little kids come up, give you a hug, give you a piece of paper saying welcome home. Just people just giving you a standing ovation as you walk by. That really made me feel good. Marching right alongside a guy who was a general at the time over there, and it was like we're all just the same batch. So.
Have you ever been to the Vietnam Wall?
I've seen a replica, but I haven't seen the actual thing. And if anything, the feeling is anything like you do around the replica, around the real one, I couldn't imagine how it would. It was just so, you could just almost feel death around it when I saw it.
Would there be names you would find on that wall, you think, that people you knew?
I didn't even look. I didn't want to look. At the time, this has probably been 15 years ago, I saw it in Lincoln, Nebraska. And of course they have the books there that you can look through and stuff, and I didn't even want to look. There is one gentleman that was locally here that I did find his name, and I knew that was on there, so I just looked for his name. So.
How do you feel about freedom, Wayne, and the price for freedom, and maybe trying to tell a young person today about that who knows nothing about war, sacrifice, defending their country? What would your message be to a young person about freedom and the price of freedom?
Well, obviously freedom isn't free. You've heard that 1,000 umpteen times. I think that we do have a duty to strive for that freedom as an American. I love the bumper sticker that says these colors don't run, and it shows the picture of the flag. And like I say, even the troops that go over today, I feel for them, but I'm proud for them, but I just have a tough time being there when they go or come home. So.
I understand that. You bet. You bet. Well, I think one of the first questions I asked you is how it changed you. Obviously, you grew up, it changed you going to Vietnam, and I really admire you for going, and kind of out of loyalty to your father or whatever. That was very moving to hear that. Today, looking back, does Vietnam have any significance in your life anymore? Obviously you did it, it's over, but do you ever reflect on it other than maybe a flashback? But do you ever think about it?
I do. Probably 10 years ago or so, the government was looking for people to go back and help look for crashed sites and stuff like that. And I had contacted whoever it was I needed to contact at the time, but they were looking more for forensic people with backgrounds in forensics, and obviously I didn't have that, but I wanted to go back there. I don't know, maybe for a closure or just maybe for, I don't know. I just felt at that time I volunteered for a 3 or 4 week mission, and but I wasn't chosen. And thanked for offering, but and I would have went. I thought that would have been quite a deal to do, and even now I would, if I had the chance, I would go back there and just maybe walk in some of the footsteps that I'd walked before.
What should our country remember about Vietnam?
That there were really, truly Americans that were there, and after we got there, most of us believed in what we were doing, and that we learned that freedom wasn't free, and that we accomplished something, even though quote unquote, we lost the war. So.
Kind of along the same lines, you might have already answered it, but what about the Vietnam veteran? What do you think the country, or what should the country know about the Vietnam veteran yesterday and today?
Oh, I think that we are a compassionate part of this country, and whether we believed in it or not, we did go, we did serve. I think there's a difference from back 35 years ago to the men and women going now. I think there's maybe more strong feeling of duty now than there was then. In my case anyway, it was more of a, well, it's just something I have to do, and let's get it over with. And but I think that the Vietnam veteran is I think in the whole now, maybe with what's happened over the last 15, 20 years, they might be coming out of a shell. And I think we are being recognized a little more. I've had over the last 4 or 5 years, I ride a motorcycle a lot, and I have a vest that I wear, and it says Vietnam Veteran on it. And I've had people come up to me and say, welcome back. People I have absolutely no idea who they are, and they've said, welcome back. And that's meant a lot to me.
How about the American flag? What does it mean and represent to you as a veteran?
Now it means everything to me. It means freedom. It means something that I fought for, and not realizing at the time probably the way I do now. Back then it didn't mean a whole lot because I was part of the Chicago '68 Democratic Convention type deal. You know, it was something to do for a teenager maybe, I don't know. Now it really means, I get very, very upset if I see on TV a burning of the American flag. I just want to go grab somebody and, you know, you realize what you're doing. This is my flag, you know. I'm probably pretty patriotic right now. So, it's taken a while, but I've got there.
I interviewed one guy who's in my documentary, and I hope to have you see that sometime. But he was a lieutenant of a recon platoon in Vietnam, and he described it as turning the switch on and off. He didn't know how to turn the switch off when he came home, and he said he was a serious student during the day and a drunk at night. He said he didn't go to the bar to socialize. He went to the bar to get drunk, and he struggled with this. He went to college. He said he didn't want anybody to know he's a Vietnam vet. So I think a lot of the things that you've said are being said by a lot of other guys, maybe from a different perspective. But that's why I think I'm glad we're talking, because this is right along the lines of what I want to hear and what it's going to help with my second documentary on Vietnam.
Good.
But I think I've asked pretty much all. I'm not after the blood and guts of war. I'm after really the personal side of how it changed you guys, and your sincerity today came out loud and clear, man. And hopefully maybe it helped you a little bit too to talk to me. And so if you're not comfortable with what I'm going to ask you now, I understand. But at the end of my interviews, this really pertains a lot to the World War II guys too. But I always have them give me a salute into the camera. Can you do that from where you're seated when I ask you?
I sure can.
Okay, just give me just a second to. Okay, so right into the camera, sir. Go ahead. Thank you. Perfect. Right on.